In this video, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the basic functionality of the TopLine feature of OctopuSequencer. Now, you can get really complicated with the things you can do with this, but I'm just going to show you what the different things do, and then I think you should check out some of the example videos that I've got on just creating cool things, and you'll see how I use TopLine in those to get various effects. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw in some dots on the top line. It's called top line because it only affects the top line of each sequencer. So at the moment this is routed down here to drums. So if I play, then we just hear whatever's set in here. And here it says to use top line for this sequencer, use the routing panel on the left to select pitch or drums or both. So this is the top line routing, and when I click let's choose pitch to begin with, then this becomes available to us. I'm going to deselect the drums. So now what's played out of the top line is determined by the top line settings. So you double click on this and that brings up the top line control for sequencer 1. So what we have in here is a piano keyboard, and you can click on any of the notes to hear the pitch, and when you click this button, click here to add selected note to the pitch or drums list, it adds whatever note you've just selected to this pitch list here. And the pitch list is basically a list of pitches which are going to be triggered in one way or another by the dots on the top line. So if I add C, D, and then E to this pitch list and hit spacebar to play, those three pitches are being played in sequence and they're being triggered by these dots. So if I get rid of some of these dots, you can hear what's happening with that. Draw them all back in. So if I add another pitch, so they're being played in order at the moment. So underneath here we have this looping all pitches button. So at the moment what is happening is each dot on here plays the next pitch in the list, and it just loops that forever. If I click this, it says restarting pitches at beat 1. So what that means is here we've got 8 notes and we've got 5 pitches. So what happens is they get played in order, and then for beats 6, 7 and 8 it loops 6, 7 and 8. But when this jumps back to 1, wherever you are in this pitch list, it restarts at the beginning. And then if I loop again, so you can hear the difference with that. And that's one way that you can sort of hear some polyrhythms is if I put in, say, crash on beat 1 and route top line to drums as route sequencer 1 to drums as well. I'm going to mute the hi-hat on this, so now we're hearing pitches that are looping 5 notes, but every 8 notes we hit a crash. So that will give you a kind of 5 against 8. If you listen to the very first note of those pitches against the crash, that's giving you a 5 against 8. So that's kind of a fun way to play around with hearing polyrhythms. Above here we've got this quick add section. This lets you add scales to the pitch list. So you can choose your scale, chromatic, various modes or chords and things. So I'm going to choose Ionian, which is the major scale. Choose the starting note. So we'll have C, let's have C2. Direction, up or down. Start degree, just if you're in the C major scale, C is start degree 1, D is start degree 2, E is start degree 3. So we'll start on 1, and then how many notes you want to add. So I'm going to add 8 notes, and then you click this button and it adds that scale to the pitch list. If I was to click down, it will add them the other way around. You can click clear all to clear the pitch list, or choose a different scale. Down here we have a velocity selector which works essentially in the same way as the pitch list, but this time the velocities are specified in this graph here, and these again are read in an order that you specify. So let me clear all the pitches and just add one pitch. So now it's just going to play C for every dot on the top line, but it's going to play them at these velocities. So we've got 8 steps, so you'll hear the change in velocity. So this slider on the right just sets all velocities to the same level. And with these things here you can set a minimum and a maximum and choose the number of steps, and it will create a ramp for you. So if I have a lot of steps, you can see the current velocity being read out here. So it's working its way up this ramp. So let's set this back to 8 steps. And it's reading them up, so from left to right. If I choose down, it'll read from right to left. If I choose up, down, it'll go up and then back. Down, up, from right to left and back. Permutation selects random ones of these in an order, but it will play them all before it starts again, and random is just completely random selection of those. So let's say I set the number of steps to 4 and just accent the first one of those 4. So there we're hearing accented groups of 4. If I was to set the length of this to 3, hide those so it doesn't look too confusing, and put a crash, so this is playing every 3rd note here, but these, if they're looping, are going to accent every 4th note. Let me just check that they are looping. Yep. So there you get an accented note against the crash here. So again, that's a way of hearing all the 16th notes, but hearing the polyrhythms. The order that you read from the pitch list can be sequential, which is from left to right. It can be random, which just reads them in a random order and doesn't repeat anything. Or you also have this velocity greater than 100, and what that means is that only when the velocity is greater than 100 will it even play a pitch. So here we've got 4 steps, so this is basically now going to play a note every 4 notes. So again, it's a way of hearing polyrhythms. So if I push this one up and this one, and again with the velocity selector you can choose to restart velocities at beat 1. So if I could have like 100 steps in here with a ramp on them going from high to low, let's say. If I loop velocities, then it's just gradually getting quieter. Right, put that back to sequential. So it's working its way down. If I tell it to restart at 1, then we'll just get the first 3 of these played. You can also route TopLine to drums instead of pitch. So we select that on here, and it's still playing these pitches, but you can see in the drum list which general MIDI sounds they relate to. Like that. So now it's going to play low whistle and then a low conga and then a splash cymbal. So it's exactly the same, and this just tells you what the sounds are that you've added. One final way that you can use the TopLine control is to type in rudiments. So in the pitch list you can type capital or lowercase r, L, K for kick, and H. So they stand for right, left, kick, and a hi-hat. And I'll put the lowercase in as well. Now what that means is instead of triggering pitches, it's going to trigger whichever notes we have assigned to L, R, K, and H over here. So here I've got ride cymbal assigned to the R. Let me slow this down, and then you can hear So we've got ride cymbal assigned to R, electric snare assigned to the left hand, kick to K, and hi-hat to H. And at the moment we're using the velocity selector to decide what velocities to play these at. So if I set this as 4 steps, you can hear that it's using those velocities. You can also click this button and choose to use accent and tap velocities, which means that a capital L will use this volume and a lowercase l will use this volume. So I could type in, for example, an accented paradiddle between the ride cymbal and the electric snare. Let me just unroot that so we're not getting that crash. And I can turn the tap volume up. So that's an accented paradiddle. You could do, say, 3-stroke things, right, left, left. So again, this is a way of hearing polyrhythms or choosing different things to phrase around the kit. To change the notes or the drums being played by L, R, K, and H, you pick the note that you want. So say we want high mid tom for the right hand, just click on the R button and that assigns the right hand to high mid tom. This is a favourite of teaser sections in drum magazines. I've typed in a regular paradiddle here, and even though I've got capitals and lowercase, over here I'm using the velocity selector rather than the accent tap volumes. I have set the velocity selector to 3 steps, and I'm accenting the first one, and left hand is set to electric snare, right hand is set to acoustic snare. So basically this is a paradiddle, and you can hear the difference between right hand and left hand because the snare drums are different sounds, and you'll hear the accent is every 3rd note. So that's a kind of tricky little thing to play, and it sounds like this. And say you wanted to know what it sounded like to play a paradiddle and accent every 5th note, just change the steps to 5, accent the first one, bring these down a little bit. So you can work through all sorts of things like that. Maybe you want to accent 1 and 3 of the 5 group. Or maybe you want to change the left hand to be on the high tom so it's easier to hear the difference. And obviously you can take this as far as you want. There's lots of interesting things you can do with it. You can save the TopLine settings in the same way that you save the settings in the regular OctopuSequencer window. You have the patch bay down here. You just give your TopLine settings a name and then shift click on one of the empty patches. This will save everything in here apart from the notes for left, right, kick and hi-hat, but everything else gets saved.